Cinema Podcast.
It's cool. It ain't a party till something gets broke.
Man, can't live with them, can't shoot them.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 23 of the Cult Cinema Podcast. I am Gage.
I'm Ashley.
And today we are talking about the 1985 film directed by Joel Schumacher, St. Elmo's Fire. Yeah. We were just...
Also, we're going to talk about how much we fucking hate this movie.
It's not good. It's not very good.
No.
Yeah.
And I love... See, this is why I thought it was a John Hughes, because of the people in it.
Right.
But also, Joel Schumacher directed Lost Boys, which is one of my favorite movies ever.
You see, Joel Schumacher forever sits in my head as the guy that almost killed Batman in the 90s with the movies that he came out with that, like Batman and Robin, Batman Forever. While they're not, like, terrible, they're kind of infamous for doing what Tim Burton had established with his Batman series kind of dirty, so...
And I don't hate Batman and Robin, but yeah, that whole
goofy.
series is pretty garbage.
It's
yeah.
goofy, yeah. But yeah, this movie, St. Elmo's Fire, has a lot of people that, a lot of people that you mentioned were in a lot of John Hughes films. I believe these groups of kids were known as the Brat Pack in the 80s, just because of how often that they were kind of cast together. And this is, Emilio Estevez, Demi Moore, Judd Nelson, this crew. But yeah, we can get into it in a sec, but there's not a single character in this movie that is like a good person or a really likable character.
Kind of Wendy, but
yeah,
even her judgment is terrible.
Right. And like everybody else in this group of friends, they're just like the most toxic people that you
I
could be
literally
around.
have that in my notes too,
Yeah.
like 15 times, like toxic.
Yeah. But it's interesting because this, the movie takes place with a bunch of friends that are, most of them are just getting out of college and kind of going into their adult lives. And this is kind of like, it's interesting because this is kind of like the period of my life that I'm currently at. But watching this movie makes me feel like, just makes me think about how fucking boring my life must be compared to what people now or in the 80s were experiencing just getting out of college. Because this movie was supposedly, Joel Schumacher was the co-writer on this movie as well. And I know a lot of things in this movie were, heavily experienced by what he was experiencing when he first got out of college and was, living in New York and trying to, make it, I guess. So
I think so I've talked to a few friends who did the college experience, like they moved and they were like in a, campus situation or even a sorority situation. And I can see how these friendships are like that because of that kind of an environment. But honestly, that wasn't my college experience. So it's really hard for me to I don't know. I just didn't have friends that I had friends in college. I hung out with friends in college, but not like this. We didn't go to bars after school and we didn't, I don't know.
yeah, most of
It just wasn't my vibe.
I still hang out, all of my friends are all friends that I have been friends with since high school, but I don't constantly hang out with a lot of friends from college. Most of the time, we got along well, but it was, if we weren't working on a school project together, we probably weren't hanging out outside of classes or anything like that.
No, I think I maybe two girls from college that I still talk to. Oh, and my friend Chris. Yeah, I still talk to him sometimes.
Gotcha.
But they've also all moved away.
Yeah.
So, there's that.
All right. Well,
anyway,
I suppose we can go ahead and get started about talking about this bad movie.
Sure. So yeah, St. Elmo's Fire. Like we mentioned, all-star cast. Demi Moore, Ali Sheedy, Judd Nelson, Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Andy McCarthy, Mayor Whittingham, and Andy McDowell. Directed by Joel Schumacher. Like I said, easily I mixed them up because of this cast of characters. We open with some credits as we kind of see a group of kids that clearly just graduated. They're in caps and gowns walking away from, it looks like a frat house. So again, the kind of relationships they had through college are, their relationships throughout this movie. But then it's quickly cut to the four of them walking into a hospital, and they're looking for their friends who have been in a car accident. Clearly, this is not the first time they are here at a hospital to the aid of these friends, because Alec, who's played by Judd Nelson, drops to the police that he works for a congressman. And then we see Emilio Estevez, who is Kirby, also talking to the police, trying to convince them to not press any charges. He's clearly going to be a lawyer or working towards being a lawyer because he, has a bunch of legal jargon that he throws at these police. Their friend Wendy, who's played by Mayor Winningham, was in the accident with Billy, who's played by Rob Lowe. But he was driving drunk and totaled her brand new car. And that's super shitty, number one. Number two, don't drink and drive.
Right.
Goes without saying. But they end up arresting Billy, obviously, for the drunk driving. And then we see Wendy and all of the friends who have arrived at the hospital follow the police to the police station to bail Billy immediately out of jail. We then see Kirby, who notices Dale, who's played by Andie MacDowell. And I'm just going to say this now. Andie MacDowell, you can get it. You look good. She's in another movie recently, a horror movie, and she looks just as good as she does right here.
Yeah.
It's impressive. She looks great.
Hair's great a little bit, but other than that, I think she looks pretty much the same way that she did 30 plus years ago.
Pretty much the same. Yeah, she looks great. But she's a doctor at this hospital, and he clearly has a crush on her, and that's made very apparent.
Yeah.
Then we kind of get some musical background, Joel Schumacher fashion. There's saxophones everywhere. It's literally the most 80s soundtrack that ever 80s. It's so tacky and awful.
Yeah.
We then see all of them pull up after they've bailed Billy out, so he's back with them. They immediately go to a bar because that makes sense. And this is St. Elmo's Bar. They clearly had frequented this bar in college as well. They walk in, everybody knows them, and Kirby actually is working there at the time, so that too, of course, would drive them to the bar. This is kind of what I noticed too about this bar, just to kind of throw it out there, is it's not Cheers type, like the show, where it is a pretty crowded college kid bar, but it gives you that vibe of like everybody knows everybody in the bar, so
yeah,
that makes sense. They all grab a table, and Billy kind of recounts what happened in the car accident, and they're all laughing about this and acting like it's not a big deal, even though he totaled this poor girl's car.
Right, yeah.
Which is just terrible. Someone then calls Leslie, which is played by Ali Sheedy, and Alec over to where they are. They're clearly a couple. Rob Lowe's then on the phone with someone, a payphone, obviously. And they say it's his wife, so he's married.
Yeah.
Which I just want to mention that at the top because of all the shitty shit he does.
Yeah, clearly,
movie.
Being very loyal to his wife, and like everybody is like just cool with the fact that he just kind of is constantly sleeping around and with people in this friend group.
Yeah, it's fine. It's Billy.
Yeah.
Meh.
It's the 80s, man.
Oh, God, the undertones of this movie are so disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so gross. Anyway, Wendy and Leslie and Jules, who's played by Demi Moore, then all go to the bathroom. They kind of give Wendy some shit for always helping Billy, but it's like, y'all aren't doing anything either, so don't, browbeat this poor girl for being the same person you are. We then see Billy hitting on some random girl. Mentioning that now. Again, because of the, marriage thing. But then Alec takes him to the restroom, and he kind of tries to kick his ass a little bit.
Yeah, he just throws him into the toilet.
Right, in a public restroom.
Right, and it's I've been one to give my buddies some shit now and then and kind of smack them around a little bit, but to throw them in a toilet like that and basically assault them is a bit much.
Because Alec got him a job and he lost it, of course. So he's upset about it. But Kevin and Kirby join them. Kevin, who is, oh gosh, I forget the actor's name. Anyway.
Something McCarthy. Andrew McCarthy?
Yeah, Andrew McCarthy.
Yeah.
Thank you. And, you know, they're all giving Billy shit, blah, blah, blah. And then they do this, like, bro handshake thing. And they have this catchphrase in the movie. It's like boogada boogada, but they do something else. And they kind of repeat that throughout the movie. So clearly that's also, like, a thing that's in their friend group. We then see all of them kind of singing along to a song in the bar. Now, this is really the only scene that I was like, this looks fun.
Yeah.
That's it. This one. That's it.
That's it. That's the only redeeming part of the movie.
Literally, that's it. We then cut to Alec and Leslie's home, which I will mention this now, and I have a fun fact about it later, but I believe they mentioned they're living in Washington, D.C., and this loft is fucking huge.
Yeah.
It has to be expensive.
It's got, I mean, it's very much like it's pretty much just a giant studio apartment, or giant studio, because it's the way that they have it set up is very, like, you know, very spacious. Like, there's clearly a lot of room that's not really being taken up by much, and it just shows how big.
Yeah.
So his Alec's job working for the senator or whatever must be pretty solid, and because I don't think we ever find out what Leslie is doing for work or anything like that, do we?
She's an artist.
Oh, yeah.
I get the impression that Leslie, Alec, Kirby, Wendy, I think that's it, come from rich families.
Yeah.
So I don't think that he's necessarily paying for this or Leslie is either.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, it's a huge fucking loft. And even back in the 80s, I'm sure that was really expensive.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's located in DC, because if you're outside the city, obviously prices are much better.
Mm-hmm.
But I worked with a girl who lived in DC for 5 years, and she, oh my God, the amount of money she said she was spending on rent is just astronomical for a one-bedroom. It's New York prices, LA prices. It's insane.
I know a lot of this movie was shot on the Universal lot, and I think it was on the same lot because apparently, like, where St. Elmo's bar is and everything, like a couple buildings down is the clock tower from Back to the Future. I don't think you actually see it in this movie, but it's like shot in the same lot and everything.
Okay.
So
that makes sense. But Leslie and Alex are kissing, and she stops to, I think she's going to get birth control, but he mentions something like, you don't have to put that on. So I don't know what she's doing, but she stops them from having sex because of this. So we also hear a knock at the door, and they both look at each other and say Jules, so they already know who it is. This clearly also happens constantly. Jules is she just rolls in and takes control of everything kind of person. This is exactly the type of friend I would never have. Yeah. Because I cannot deal with it.
That kind of best friend that just rolls up and will just come in through the door if it's unlocked and start taking stuff out of your fridge. And
it's a tornado effect. Because then as soon as she starts bitching about her family and stuff to Leslie starts bitching. It's like the back and forth, the rumor generation. It's a very girls thing, but it's also very disgusting, and I wish that women didn't do that with each other. But again, 80s. So Alec, we see him also moving like a mattress somewhere, so she's clearly staying the night. And she's drinking straight vodka.
Yeah, just straight vodka, no mixer or anything, just straight out of the glass.
No ice.
No nothing.
Yikes. Anyway, we cut to Kevin's apartment, and he is raging out to some Aretha Franklin. And Kirby arrives home, so they're roommates. Kirby tells him all about Dale and seeing her at the hospital. Billy also stumbles in and wants to crash there for the night and not go home to his wife, which is also something that no one seems surprised by. So
right. Yeah, but it's cool. Hey, that's Billy, man. He's just here. He's everywhere. You can't get rid of him.
Yep, literally. He's a venereal disease of this friend group. Kevin's going on and on about love and how it sucks, and he's clearly like the philosophical kind of friend.
Yeah, because he's the writer.
Right. He is the writer.
Yeah.
This movie also just jumps constantly.
Mm-hmm.
So apologies now, but when I say cut to a lot, it'll probably be like 50 times. But that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
You just leave the scene and go to the next one.
And like the way that, excuse me, sometimes they'll cut to certain scenes and it doesn't seem like that should be taking place right after. Like there's like you almost think that it's almost a flashback for a second with the way that the continuity, like just because of the continuity. But it's
also, it makes it hard to follow.
Yeah.
And I hate when movies do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're jamming way too much in to, this hour and a half when you could have just probably cut out like 40% of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it might actually have been better.
Yeah.
Anyway, we cut to Wendy, Leslie, and Jules in their shopping. Mm-hmm. They eventually meet up with all the boys again. They all pile into Jules's Jeep, also very unsafe. And again, they want to go to St. Elmo's bar, but Alec has to work. We immediately cut to Jules's apartment, and she's with Kevin. And this apartment is just pink everywhere. It's like pink threw up all over the place.
Yeah.
She tells Kevin to fix a drink and that she was needing to talk to him. She asks why he never made a pass at her all those nights they stayed up late talking in college, because apparently he was the only guy that ever didn't. So, she's asking him. Basically, she asks him if he's gay and if he's in love with Alec.
God forbid a man actually respect a woman's boundaries.
Right. Right. And you can also tell immediately Kevin's that kind of guy. He would probably, we'll find out later, he is that person. He respects who you are. He stands back. He doesn't force anything. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he says he's not gay. And even if he was, he wouldn't be ashamed of it. But he also is just like, all right, I got to get out of here. Like, I can't stay in this conversation. But she's trying to introduce him to her gay neighbor who designed her pink puke apartment. And he's like, okay, no, bye. And again, that's the end of that scene. It's so random. Because then we cut to Kirby, who is at a restaurant, and this is before they've even opened. He's asked Dale to lunch, and he's there to, like, get things organized and really impress her. Mm-hmm. And he calls Jules to help him. Jules works, I think, at a bank, if I wrote that down right. And she's on a Zach Morris phone, if you remember that. Just huge.
Yeah.
First cell phones ever. She's talking about how happy she is, though, because it's payday. But the woman that's passing around the checks, which used to be a thing, says, look, you've advanced 2 months on your paycheck. I don't have anything for you. And what the fuck, dude? Who just does that?
I guess
it's not allowed now.
Right. I mean, we see the lifestyle that Jewel lives with the apartment, and she mentions that I think Kevin asks, how does she afford all of this? And she's like, well, that's what they make credit cards for, or something along those lines. Yeah. So it's clear that she wants to live that, high society kind of thing, lots of money, partying all the time kind of girl. Yeah. And is clearly not super responsible with her money.
No.
Yeah.
And I'll say it now, but it bears repeating. People in this generation, so your dad's age, roughly, mm-hmm. Some were responsible enough to not do this, but I would say, 80%, this is how people got fucked up now. Mm-hmm. So people living nowadays who have to jump through all these hoops to get credit, have credit scores, which mm-hmm. wasn't a thing in the 80s. It's because y'all fucked this up. You put tons of companies in debt, so now they have all these rules, and not that that's bad. The rules are good. Yeah. But fucking control yourselves.
We had to institute all these limits so that people wouldn't completely get fucked over. But yeah.
Right. She tells the lady that she needs to get paid, though, because she has to pay for her stepmother's funeral. And this narrative comes around throughout the whole movie.
Yeah. Where she clearly is, on the ups with her father, and who she calls her step monster on a consistent basis, and how much she hates her. Right. Stuff like that. Yeah. So there's clearly like some kind of like history that she has that likely is maybe somewhat responsible for the way that she acts now. Probably, maybe.
I guess.
Maybe.
I'm not even sure why they pulled this like weird side storyline in.
Well, we see kind of towards the end, and I don't want to get too much into it because we'll get to it later, but she kind of has essentially a mental breakdown at the end.
Fair enough.
And she does kind of go into that a little bit and kind of, it's like, well, why doesn't, my dad love me or anything like that? So.
Right. And I'm going to assume this woman probably was, we don't learn about Jules's actual mom, where she is. So I'm assuming this woman was definitely like her mother figure for most of her life. If not, at least in some formative years that was important to growing up and becoming a woman. So whatever.
It sounds like maybe she was, while she was the kind of maybe the only woman-like motherly-like figure that she had in her life, and her stepmother maybe just wasn't able to provide what it was that Jules was looking for in those coming of age years.
You can clearly tell she's a very spoiled person though too. So if this woman gave her any sort of discipline, I'm sure she rebelled against it.
Yeah.
So, which I'm sure strained their relationship.
Sure.
We then cut back to Kirby and Dale at lunch, like I said, at the fancy restaurant. But before she can even eat or do anything, she's immediately called back to the hospital. So, life of a doctor. It's kind of expected. We then are immediately back at Alec and Leslie's house, and she's cooking dinner. She tells Kevin, who is also there, that her perfect sister and her perfect husband are getting a divorce. Leslie is the character that she is in this relationship with Alec. They've clearly been in this relationship, I'm going to guess, most of college.
Sure, yeah.
4 years, 3 years at least. But she does not want to get married. She doesn't think that's important. She likes her independence. And of course, a woman in the 80s. Too. Yep, working on her career. And a woman of the 80s, that wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
So, she's kind of prying at Kevin, too, about being perpetually single. And she doesn't come out and say what Jules did about him being gay, but you can kind of get that's the tone as well. Alec arrives home, and I didn't say this earlier, but before Jules busted in their apartment, he was talking about her getting, like, fancy lingerie because she's in, like, his old T-shirt.
Yeah.
So he actually went out and bought this, like, very cheap-looking lingerie and tells her to go try it on. And she's like, now we have fucking company. And he's like, yeah, just go do it.
That's not awkward
so she
at
goes
all.
To I know. It's such a weird dynamic, too. Their personal boundaries in this friend group is also something to be uncomfortable about.
Yeah, because there are none.
Right. It's so creepy. So she goes to change, and he tells Kevin, which, by the way, the distance from the kitchen to their bedroom might be a good distance, but it doesn't make it seem that way when they're, like, panning around this room. And he just blatantly is telling Kevin that he fucked this sales girl, in the changing room, basically. How did she not hear that?
Yeah, because it's like Kevin can clearly hear them starting to, like, fool around, and just what's not even the next room. It's this because it's a studio apartment. It's the same room.
Exactly.
The only thing that is like dividing them is like a couple bookshelves and a curtain.
Right, or like Soji screens, which were everywhere. They're not walls.
Yeah.
And he's like, Leslie better marry me because I got to stop fooling around on her. And Kevin's like, okay, he rolls his eyes. So he cheats on her all the time, too, which is
because he's
gross.
convinced that marrying Leslie will make him a more faithful man.
Right.
Which is stupid.
Obviously stupid. We then see Kevin wandering around. What we eventually see is like outside his apartment. But he starts talking to a couple sex workers that are outside. And one woman in particular asked why he never wants a date. And she said she assumed it's because he was gay too. So I don't know what this poor guy is putting this vibe off, but everyone thinks he's gay.
I had that in middle school where just like everybody, because I was like not one to like, granted it's middle school, but like I wasn't one to like be flirtatious with girls or anything like that. So like even a majority of the people in my friend group assumed that I was gay for a little while.
Oh.
So. But
well,
yeah.
I wouldn't think, I don't know. And I'm also not the kind of person that's going to ask you about it. So
yeah.
If you tell me, you tell me. We then see Alec and Leslie at home in bed, and Jules calls them again. It's clearly late. They are both sleeping. She tells them she's at some fancy hotel with some Arab gentlemen, and they have been making her do coke all night. I just want to mention that too. Mm-hmm. Again, because 80s. She's scared, and she's pretty sure they want to gangbang her. So please come get her. It's like, okay, this is a normal conversation, I guess. Because Alec does leave and goes and gets her.
And the way that he goes about it, too, is like not like he's rushing to go save his friend. He's like, you know, pretty slow about getting his jacket on and his shoes on before he leaves out the door, because it's clearly her getting involved with some drama or something that, you know, they've had to rescue her from before.
Clearly.
And the whole line about like making her do a bunch of coke. I mean, we see her continuously doing coke throughout the movie, so how much they made her do it, I don't know. I'm not one to question that, but
I don't think they made her do anything. Yeah. Jules is not the kind of person that you make do anything.
Yeah.
Clearly. We see that multiple times
for sure
over this movie. We then, after Alec gets her out of the room, blah, blah, blah. We then cut to Wendy at her job, and she's clearly some kind of social worker or welfare assistant person. Mm. Again, Wendy's probably the only redeeming person in this movie, and that's pretty much throughout until the end. And then it's like, fuck, Wendy.
Yeah.
God, you were such a good person. Anyway, this woman, though, is basically just like, give me my check, I want to leave. She's got all these kids with her. She doesn't want to be there. Which, again, 80s. You ruined this for everybody. Because you fucked all these things up, these social systems that were in place, and you fucked it all up. And now they're, you know, hoops. Just tons of hoops.
Yeah.
Billy pops up again, though, and she asked him why he isn't at work. And he's like, well, I got fired. Again. Because that's me. I suck at everything.
Oh, Billy.
God.
Cue laugh track.
Right. We then are at Wendy's house with her family, and Billy is there with her for some reason. And again, Wendy's just very sweet, talking to all these people, even when they're kind of shitty to her. Her dad is clearly a greeting card business. Like, he started this greeting card company, I think. So, and he really wants her to work for him because she would make money and, you know, all kinds of stuff. They all sit down for dinner. Billy then kind of disappears for a second, and we hear one of the little kids in the house come up and say that he's on the roof. So Wendy goes up to the roof. They're kind of laughing about this while the family's down on the ground, like freaking out and about to call the police. Yeah. It's like, tell them he's fine, Wendy. Like, calm them down.
Right. Because, like, even her mother was like, I knew it from the moment I saw him. Drugs. He must be doing drugs.
Of course.
I mean, there's no shadow of a doubt in my mind that Billy is on something, but
all the time. Yeah. For sure. They kind of have this heart-to-heart type thing on the roof, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. But then they go back inside, and Billy's, of course, still drunk. They're in some sort of, I want to call it like the library, mm-hmm. if you want to, because it's clearly a big fancy house. Yeah. And he pours Wendy a drink as well. They start kissing, but Wendy stops him at first, and apologizes, which, oh, God. Women of the 80s, too, with the apologies. Billy kind of starts, like, rubbing up her leg, and he kind of makes fun of her. She's got these, like, spank things on, which are very common. There's nothing wrong with wearing them. Mm-hmm. And Wendy's not fat by any means, but this is clearly something that she's self-conscious about. And she tells Billy they really shouldn't see each other anymore, and he leaves. Like, that's all there is really to that. Oh, but I did want to mention this. Her dad handed her $200 before they sat down to dinner.
Oh, right, yeah.
Assuming that was for her, and she gives it to Billy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God. This guy fucking sucks.
Yeah. And it's hard to like, because it's Wendy's kind of giving into it. She very much is kind of a pushover, and you kind of feel bad for her, but to some extent. But it's like, come on, like, you just want her to like really kind of get out of that whole thing. Which I know getting out of a toxic relationship is not the easiest thing in the world. Trust me, I know a lot about that.
Ditto. I married one of those. Not now. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll make that very clear. I've been married before. He was Billy to a T.
Gotcha. But yes, but it's you kind of want to cheer her on, but she's kind of doing it to herself. I don't know.
She very much is. And I have to always wonder when I'm watching this, how did she stay friends with these people?
Right.
And how'd she even become friends with these people? Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense. She's nothing like them. And she probably never was.
Yeah. I can only maybe seeing her like in terms of like comparing her to another character, because as of right now in the movie, Leslie seems to be like the only other kind of not a total piece of shit character at the moment. So I would assume that maybe I mean, we're reading probably a bit too much into it because I'm sure that there wasn't, too much thought put into it when they were writing it. But it seems like maybe her and Leslie were friends at one point just because they seem to have their heads on a little bit more straight compared to the others.
See, that's the thing. All the stuff I've read about this movie is the main focus of this movie is about the character development. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? And Joel Schumacher's quoted a bunch in a bunch of interviews for a bunch of different things. This is like the typical 80s friend group after college, and that's what you go through. And it's like, nobody's going through these series of events. Joel Schumacher, you are fucking wrong.
Right. Especially not back to back to back all at the same time.
No. It's fucking nutballs. So you are supposed to see this character development, and you are supposed to like these characters, but it's like, you literally give the audience no reason to do that.
There's also like there's no character development. Like it doesn't seem like there's a character that goes through other than maybe Jules. It doesn't seem like anybody really goes
a little bit Leslie, I guess. And Wendy's just Wendy until the end when she makes terrible decisions, and then it's like, okay. Yeah, because the end is supposed to lead you to believe they're going to be better people, and it's like,
right.
Okay.
It's like if they're just all back to the beginning of where they were before, which was already kind of a toxic friend group. Minus Billy, though. At least they don't have Billy anymore. Sorry, we'll get into that part later, but
yeah. Anyway, we are back at St. Elmo's bar, and it's Halloween, so everybody's dressed up in weird get-ups to an extent. And Billy is playing the saxophone because this is a Joel Schumacher film and someone has to be playing the saxophone for absolutely no reason, extremely loud in a terrible cover band. And this is exactly what we get.
I know Rob Lowe learned to play saxophone for this movie, but I don't know if that's actually him playing it. I would assume it's probably some track that they have dubbed over him. But
it very much is. Yeah. Fine that he did that, I guess.
Because I mean, at that point, like, why bother if they're just gonna put music over it? But
right. Jules starts to tell Leslie she started sleeping with her boss, and that's obviously taboo. But then she goes to dance. Alec then asks Kevin for an extra key to his place because the chick from the lingerie store wants to meet up, and of course he's gonna do that because he's disgusting too. Wendy is there with a date, this poor schlubby fellow, who also works for her parents' greeting card company. Mm-hmm. We see Jules kiss Billy, which at first sort of upsets Wendy, you can tell, but it is what it is. Because again, no one's going to say anything to anybody in this friend group, so. Jules also brought her gay neighbor, I guess for Kevin. And so they're all sitting at this table together. We then see a woman enter with a guy, two people we've never seen before, and this is Billy's wife. And these fucking friends have the goddamn audacity to criticize her for bringing a guy to the bar that her husband is playing at. It's like, Are you fucking kidding me?
With all of the affairs that go on in this movie, I'm surprised it's not a Woody Allen film, honestly, because that's like all of what his movies are. Like, I was half convinced I was watching a Woody Allen movie halfway through this movie.
That's a really good comparison.
Yeah, because that's all Woody Allen films are. It's just a bunch of people committing adultery for like
all the time.
Yeah,
and it's his excuse to be naked with underage girls.
Absolutely. God, yeah. I did a whole presentation my sophomore year of high school, my film class, about how like we had to do director studies. We had to pick a director. I had heard of Woody Allen, but I had never seen any of his stuff. So I picked him, and we had to do we had to pick 3 movies to watch and kind of give like a summary. And I did that. I picked 3 movies at random, and basically the whole presentation was just like, all right, here's what his movies are, and here's why Woody Allen's a piece of shit. And and my film,
good for you.
Yeah, and of course, like my film teacher was like, yes, but Manhattan or whatever, is that the name? I think that's the name of the movie. Is like a love letter to New York, and I was like, yes, but it's also a story of a 40-year-old man having sex with a 17-year-old, and then like his friends having an affair. So it's like, yeah.
It's all gross. Yeah. I don't know. Again, it might be a nostalgia thing. Certain directors that people are just in love with, and I'm like, fucking why?
Yeah.
There's nothing good about anything they've ever done. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how they're so noteworthy and Oscar worthy, and I don't know. I don't get it. Also not my bag, like, you know, those kinds of movies I wouldn't normally watch anyway, but yeah, fuck Woody Allen, you're a piece of shit. So Billy gets super jealous of this event that's occurring because she sits like right by the stage, so he'll obviously notice her. It's a very high school, you know, thing. And he does notice her, immediately starts to yell at the guy. The music cuts off, and he starts to fight this dude, and it's like, why? Like, I don't get
your hands off my wife. Even though
right,
I've had my hands on plenty of other women, but I won't let her sleep with one other guy.
Because of course not. Yeah. So the fight kind of trickles out to outside, and eventually it's like broken up a little bit. Everybody laughs when they go back inside, and Billy and his wife literally just start making out, and it's like, okay.
What a fucking roller coaster.
Literally. A roller coaster with no real end.
Yeah.
No good end at all. We then cut to Wendy again, the good one of the group so far, and she's volunteering in a soup kitchen. Jules and Leslie show up though and want to take her out to lunch, and it's like Wendy's like, I can't. I'm literally feeding homeless people. Like,
and of course Jules is all in like a really nice fancy outfit and everything. Her hair all done up and everything.
I'm sure coked out of her mind. Leslie says, well, they can just eat here. And I see what you mean about the Leslie Wendy thing. Yeah, I could see how they could be friends for sure. And then Leslie probably pulled her into this friend group, so fine. Jules says that her and Leslie came to talk to Wendy because they're worried about her, and Wendy says, actually, Jules, me and Leslie want to talk to you because we really don't like this affair you're having with your boss, and it's dangerous, and blah, blah, blah.
Finally, someone calls out the red flags. Maybe this is the one and only time that it happens.
Yeah, I think it is, honestly. Yeah.
Other than Jules kind of calling out Wendy for spending too much time with Billy. But I
guess. I don't know.
But anyway, you were saying.
But again, just as soon as Jules hears this, the tornado effect, and she runs away from any conversation they're about to have. We then see Leslie and Wendy walking together and talking about her and Alec, and she does ask about Billy because she hasn't seen him in a while. And Leslie says Alec got him a job working for a wealthy businessman, and he seems to be doing really good. But then we immediately cut to fucking Billy fucking some woman in this bathtub of clearly this guy's house he's working for. Yep. And he walks in on them and, of course, is pissed. Whatever. We then cut away from that and see Kirby standing in the rain. And at this point, this is where Kirby becomes a fucking stalker. Yeah. And he is...
That's a total creep.
Disgusting. Yeah. Yes, total creep. He rides his bike in the rain and follows her from the hospital to this house because she arrives at a house. And he's being a creepy creep and looking through this window at her and sees her with this guy and gets fucking pissed. And then we see a point of view shot of him walking through this party and he confronts her.
Yeah.
Like, who the fuck are you? The whole time, because this happens a few other times in the movie, I'll say it again. Who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Leave this woman alone.
And the thing is like, she doesn't come off as like freaked out. Like, she mentions that she's like flattered by the whole thing. And I'm like, how are you not like scared out of your fucking mind after all this thing, all of like this guy coming out to like visit you at this party, or like followed you to this party, or visited you out in this cabin in the middle of nowhere, and you're just like,
call the police. And that guy who was with her should have beat his head in with a bat. Get off my property.
It's like a whole cliche where it's like the guy goes through all of these challenges and obstacles to get to the girl, but like at the end of the day, you're just being a total fucking creep and stalking her. But like Hollywood will turn this into like, oh, well, it's romantic, and it's like, no, it's fucking creepy.
It's fucking creepy. She gave you literally zero, like nothing.
Yeah.
She had lunch with you once and didn't even eat because she had to go back to the hospital.
Right.
She's never talked to you again after that. And even after this creepy incident, you talk to her, one more time, and she's still, it's like a passing thing. You're not on her radar whatsoever. Yeah. You're not in her life. You're not a person that she thinks of in her life that way. You fucking stalker weirdo. Creepy. It's so fucking creepy. We cut to her, though, at her apartment, and he has followed her home at that point, too. Or maybe she drove him. I don't know.
Yeah.
She's kind of wandering around her apartment, though, telling him that she's not a good catch as a girlfriend. She's listing all her flaws, and again, fucking weird. Make him leave. Yeah. This is so creepy.
And it gets even weirder because like her roommate comes in, and then she goes into the next room, and then Kirby just picks up her pillow and smells it and the roommate is just like, the roommate clearly knows that this guy is not fucking sane.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. He smells the pillow. The roommate sees him. She says something about, I don't even know, but it's about money. And he's like, oh, well, that's why, you don't like me, because I don't have any money. And it's like, and she looks confused.
Yeah.
And I'm just as confused.
Right, yeah. It's like,
because none of this made any fucking sense. And I'm not sure why they even included this in the film.
It just makes him come off as so daft, because he seems like a fairly intelligent human being in the very beginning of the movie, and it's just like, God,
it's gross.
If anything, if there are character arcs, they're like in the opposite way. They're like, they just become a shittier person throughout most of the movie.
Absolutely. Again, Wendy falls downhill. I think, like I said, Leslie, I think, is the only one in my opinion that clearly kind of grows a little bit.
Yeah.
Her alone, though, and I'll talk about that when we get to it, because that pissed me off, too. It's not good. It's just not the worst thing that ever happened to any of these characters in the end. Anyway, so he left, and we cut to the next day, or I don't know when, daytime, and Billy's at college, back at their college, and he's kind of walking around campus, and he clearly is, like, missing being there. I'm sure these were some of the best years of his life, so he's reminiscing. He starts to play football with a bunch of the guys that are now in his frat house. I'm pretty sure that's what they said. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah, I think they might have been like underclassmen when he was like, or something like that.
I don't know
when he was a
but
senior.
They're in the frat house now, so whatever. And I kind of know how sororities work. Obviously, a class leaves, a class comes in, so maybe he like was a senior when all these guys were there. I don't know. But they play football a little bit, and he kind of mentions to one of the guys that maybe he could get a job on campus, and he's like, oh yeah, that would be awesome. We need someone like you here. And he looks super excited, and then he's like, we need you to get us good drugs. It's like, that's all you're good for, obviously.
And you think that this would like really spark a change in Billy, as him just being known as the guy that is always partying and always doing drugs, and like you can clearly tell that Billy wants to improve his life and he wants to be a better husband and a better dad, but he doesn't take any action whatsoever to actually attempt to redeem himself. And that's the most fucking frustrating part about this character, is that it's like he doesn't even try.
At all.
Yeah.
Doesn't try at all. Because then we immediately see his wife and daughter. They're also on the campus, so I'm going to guess she's still in college, possibly.
That, or because like we saw them kiss when they were at the bar the night before, so maybe they came together. Like it was one of those cuts where they cut directly to them sitting on the park bench, and you're kind of like, where the fuck did they come from?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I said. Where'd you come from?
Right.
And she's basically like, some dude who I was with before I met you still wants to marry me, so I think I'm going to do that because he'll take care of me and, the baby. And he's like, well, no, don't do that. Don't give up on me. And she's like, okay. Again, that's literally the exchange.
Yeah.
I can't describe it any better than that. He does promise he won't drink anymore and go fuck around with women, and obviously that's not true either. We then see Kirby interviewing with a older businessman, I'm going to say.
He's the same businessman that Billy previously worked for when he was like his assistant.
I thought that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically,
Okay.
Kirby's applying to take over what Billy's old job was.
It's like a personal assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's saying all the right things. The guy hires him. Cool. He, again, is outside Dale's hospital. He has made this woman driver, who clearly drives for this man, take him to the hospital, drive him there to pretend he's, doing well for himself, which he is clearly not. He pays the driver to go along with this ruse and invites Dale, when she's coming out of the hospital, minding her own goddamn business, invites her to this party he's throwing at this man's house, which is like, okay, this is not good.
Yeah.
So we immediately cut to that party. And Wendy's there with her date. I've got his name now. It's Howie.
Yeah.
Which of course it is.
Let's also keep in mind that when Kirby invites Dale to the party, she says maybe. Like, she doesn't say like she'll be there or anything, and yet he still goes on to throw this party for his boss, or at his boss's house.
Yeah. To try to impress her yet again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very nonchalant from her. She's like, okay, well, bye. Like, I'll try to make it. Whatever. So, yeah, she's giving you zero signs that she's into you. I will just say that. We see Alec and Leslie also at this party, of course. And Alec tells Billy that he's not getting him any more jobs. And then we see Jules going on and on about her stepmother again. And again, just that plot line throughout the whole thing. Then we see Kirby calling the hospital looking for Dale. You saw her leave. I guess she could have gone back, but whatever. So he's calling the hospital, flipping out because no one will let him talk to her. It's like, you're a stranger calling for someone who works there. That's, even in the 80s, they're not going to give you that information. Right. We then see Billy kind of come out to this like back terracey portion where Wendy's standing. He asks if she's forgiven him for being an asshole, and she's like, no, but you kind of helped me grow up, and I think, I learned something from our friendship, I guess. I don't know. Again, that's very short-lived. It doesn't really prove to you as the audience that matters either.
Yeah. We
then see Alec get everyone's attention and quiet the music down, and he tells them that Leslie is finally going to do him the honor of being his wife. And she is fucking pissed because clearly she did not agree to this. Yeah.
No conversation beforehand whatsoever.
Clearly. Because she immediately pulls him into the kitchen, and she's like, look, you don't really want to marry me. And he's like, yeah, I do. I really want to. And she's like, you just want the Christmas card with us and the happy family on it. And then he throws the shit in her face about stop worrying about your career or using that as an excuse to not marry me and just marry me. And she's like, you can see like the turn
Yeah.
in her. And this is the only part that I was like, yeah, in the whole movie.
Right.
Because she's like, maybe you could just stop cheating on me all the fucking time. And that might make me want to marry you. And he immediately is like, what did Kevin tell you?
Right.
And she's like, he didn't tell me anything. But he storms out, finds Kevin, pushes him over, demands to know what he told Leslie. And she's like, again, he didn't tell me anything. It was a hunch, but now I know it's fucking true. So, and everyone goes quiet, and this asshole tells her to leave his apartment.
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me? At this point, I paused it because I had to like stand up and do like one of these.
Yeah.
I just could not believe the audacity of these fucking men in this movie. It's just insane. So far, Kevin's okay.
Yeah.
But everybody else, you fucking suck. You're terrible. You're terrible people. Jules does kind of check on Kevin, though. And Leslie looks devastated. And it's like, girl, why? You knew he was cheating on you, at least for a little while. Or recently. Let's just say that. But whatever.
I think it's because she, still loves him and loved what their relationship originally was, and kind of maybe harkens back to that a little bit.
Fine. That's fine. Having been through that personally, the back and forth, the being upset when he left, getting back together, breaking up, I get it. It is something I'm sure a lot of women go through when they're young, even in older age, until you really learn that about yourself and how you can't let people treat you that way. I can see how this is going to be a cycle.
Yeah.
We then see stalker-ass Kirby at Dale's apartment ringing her buzzer and yelling at the top of his lungs to let her roommate in the fucking house. And she's like, fuck right off.
Yeah.
Again, she's the only one that's kind of sane. But she does mention that she left for the weekend to go skiing. Now, the roommate did not tell him where she went.
Right.
So in a minute here, when we go over this, how the fuck did he know that? How did he find this out?
Yeah. Maybe there's only one ski lodge nearby. Something like that. I don't know.
Also, you know what? I'll save it for me.
Okay.
Anyway, so she tells him to fuck right off and he leaves. We then see Jules dropping Billy off at his house. And he's like, no, I want to keep drinking, having a good time. She's like, well, the bars are closed. And he says, well, let's go to your place. And at first, she's like, all right, fine. She goes to start the car, but then he stops her and just tells her how pretty she is. And then he asks basically what's under her skirt and starts like groping her. It's sexual assault. We're just going to call it what it is.
And this is like the last time we saw Billy. It was him, like the last time we really see him is him at the park talking to his wife about how he's going to be doing better. And then here he is.
Yep.
With Jules.
Not only are you, trying to fuck a woman, you're trying to fuck your friend.
Yeah.
Who they make out a little bit, but then she tells him to stop and pushes him off of her repeatedly. At that point, no is no.
Yeah.
And you violate that as well. Because she immediately just tells him, look, I really needed a friend tonight. And he's like, he looks sad, I guess, to an extent, but she gets back in the Jeep and drives away. And we see the wife in the doorway. So she probably watched that whole fucking fiasco, happen. So he tries to yell after her, though, that he is sorry. But obviously, who cares at that point?
Right.
Okay, so here it comes. We then see Kirby driving this poor dude's vehicle. Because it's not his. We know that much.
Well, I think it's... isn't he borrowing Wendy's car? Didn't she get a new one after the last one was totaled? Yeah.
It is Wendy's car. You're right. I put this here because I didn't catch the car thing until later. But, all right. I'll try not to yell at the top of my lungs because this whole scene pisses me the fuck off. So, again, he's driving this car through the snow. It gets stuck in front of this cabin. Again, how did he know she was at this cabin? All valid questions.
Yeah.
Let's just assume they are living in D.C. Because I can't verify that. I don't even think I wrote it down in my fun facts. So if you're going to ski somewhere around Washington, because also let's make a note. It's not winter in Washington. It's clearly fall, summer. No one's in coats. There's no snow anywhere.
Well, they just had like the Halloween. So I think, and the way that they cut, I would assume that we can probably say this is probably mid to late November, maybe. I mean, it's...
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. The fact is, though, there's no snow
Yeah.
in any of these scenes, you know. So he drove somewhere to find the snow. So let's think for a second. Where are you driving to find this snow? There's no
Right.
mountains around Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So you're probably either going to New York area.
Somewhere in
You
in New England or Midwest, yeah.
Exactly. To have that much snow and a cabin, you're not anywhere around D.C. He'd have to drive hours.
Yeah.
And it makes it seem like he drove like 15 minutes
Right,
down the road.
yeah.
It's like...
Because it's just
so
like
fucking
you
weird.
you don't really like get a good look at like any snow anywhere else because you just see him get up to this cabin and all of a sudden there's just like feet of snow and I was like, bro, where the fuck are you?
Right. Where are you? Exactly. And he drove there
Yeah.
after finding out she went skiing and then after somehow miraculously tracking down the one cabin she's staying at.
Yeah.
Anyway, the car stalls out in the snow. And he goes up to the cabin, falling a few times. He's knocking and literally yelling at the top of his lungs, for Dale, and where is she? And some guy answers the door and is like, who are you? And Kirby's like, who the fuck are you? And he's like, this is my cabin.
Yeah.
Who are you? And again, Dale kind of pops up and is perfectly nice.
Yeah.
Is not freaked out at
creeped
all.
out by this guy that you barely know who clearly drove hours to see you for whatever reason and you're just going to be super chill and invite him inside.
Right. And not only that, bitch, this good dude's going to wear your fucking skin as a suit. That's the only logical conclusion you should be driving at this point. He found you in the middle of nowhere, is threatening your boyfriend, is screaming at you to come outside. Fucking no. A whole lot of no all over this fucking situation. And yeah, they invite him in. And then, just to be a petty little baby, she tries to give him, pajamas because he's clearly soaking wet and he won't wear them.
Because they're his pajamas. That's the guy, whoever guy she's with.
Unbelievable.
It's like this guy's okay. So he's supposed to be like what 23, so somewhat young adult. Definitely should be out of college. Should be definitely more mature than to decline warm clothes, because he's the most childish, definitely out of all of them.
Absolutely. You're a fucking huge baby.
Yeah.
For absolutely no reason. This woman has shown zero interest in you.
Right.
As far as the audience can tell. Yeah, and you're right. People look at this as like, oh, it's romantic. No, it's fucking disgusting and creepy. And men out there everywhere, if she doesn't present interest in you, leave her the fuck alone. That's all you got to do. Anyway, he stays the night. Unfucking believable. And we then cut back to Leslie and Kevin. She's at Kevin's apartment because, again, Alec kicked her out of their house after finding out that he's been cheating on her constantly. And she's kind of commiserating her relationship. And, they're friendly enough. This whole conversation seems friendly. And then she walks over to his desk and finds this box that is laying there and is not put away, which... this is not something you would just leave out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, why was this here?
Especially if you have a roommate, but given how there is no boundaries between roommates, I doubt. I'm sure Kirby is already probably well aware of Kevin's whole infatuation that he has with Leslie that we already know about at this point.
Yeah, because there's literally 20. Hold on, I gotta kick my dogs out of the room. Pause. Right, Leslie is not taken aback at all by these dozens of photos of just her.
Yeah.
Which also is creepy in itself. But she now realizes that he's not gay. He's just been in love with her the whole time. So this is probably the only time that I was like, okay, that's kind of nice. He didn't ever say anything to her. He never tried to like ruin their relationship or do anything along those lines, but he's clearly very in love with her.
Yeah.
So they hook up.
Which okay, so with that, I think that they're both at fault. I don't think that they should have done that. I think it was, of course they've both been drinking, so there's that as a factor. One, it's clear that Alec and Kevin are already really good friends. So even though they were, having a huge feud, for Kevin to go and to sleep with his, maybe his best friend's girlfriend, probably not the right call. But also for her to give Kevin that false sense of security that she's going to immediately just, go with him now, I think is really fucked up.
I do too.
It creates, So
it's all bad. They all make terrible decisions. Now, I will say I've been in a situation with a friend who I thought was a friend, and I had broken up with someone, and I am upset about that. I don't remember if I'd been drinking or not, but we didn't end up hooking up. But it's very that, well, now you're single, so now I'm going to attempt to hit on you. And it's like, that's not what I came here for.
Right. But it definitely seemed like it was more Leslie kind of moving in on Kevin a little bit more.
I agree.
So, and I think he was just like, he was drunk. He was kind of like finally getting to live out this fantasy, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Sure.
But yeah, I think her, because she leaned into that, I think really gave him that full sense of security and made him think that it's like, okay, now it's like, whatever, I'm finally with the girl that I like. Fuck whatever friendship I had going on before.
Right,
So,
because that's immediately what happens next.
Yeah.
We cut to morning, and they'd been probably going at it all night. And someone opens the apartment door, and at first we think it's Kirby, but then we find out it's Alec. So it's like, obviously this is really bad timing. He's either been out drinking the whole night or started drinking again. I don't know. He's clearly drunk-ish again now. He's apologizing to Kevin, though, because he's like, obviously you didn't tell her. But Leslie's there listening to this whole, like, spiel he's doing as well. And he kind of eventually goes out of the room, gets a robe on, goes to talk to him, and tries to get him to leave. And he's like, man, I got company. And he's like, oh, is it that fat chick from the party? And, he tries to get him to go out. But Leslie pops up, which, again, you didn't have to do this. Like, you could have explained this to Alec later. This was also a terrible, like, writing decision on behalf of everyone who thought this was a good call. Because she just pops up wrapped in blankets, so you're obviously led to believe they've been hooking up. Yeah,
and it's also like, well, because at first I was thinking, it's like, okay, Kevin slept with his best friend's girlfriend. Other people in this friend group have clearly done worse. But it's the fact that Kevin did end up giving Alec a key to their apartment so that he could hook up with that lingerie girl. And so it's clear that you piece it together. Kevin was kind of, okay with Alec doing this because it would probably make it more likely for Alec and Leslie to break up, therefore giving Kevin a better chance. So it's,
yeah, I guess. But none of it's good, obviously. No. This is all terrible. We then see Kirby back at the cabin. And again, this dude's being extremely nice. He helps him get his car out of the snow. Dale's still being nice to him. He's still being a sulky fucking baby, but whatever. And the boyfriend says, well, let me go grab our camera and take a picture of you guys. It's like,
the fuck? Why?
Right. Why?
Like, get this guy off your property and out of your sight.
Literally, or call the... I don't get it. So he goes to get the camera.
It's so stupid. It doesn't make any sense. Any sense.
No, it's not like anybody asked to take their picture.
Because it's almost like Dale and Kirby are almost confused as to why he would bring out the camera, like why he would do that.
They both look confused. Yeah, absolutely. So there's kind of this back and forth between Dale and Kirby. I didn't write any of this down on what he said or anything. But he kisses her, and she looks like impressed from the kiss. Barf. And the boyfriend takes the picture. she keeps the picture, and then we see Kirby driving away, like, cackling like an old crazy person. Like,
what's also great about the photo is that it's clearly not a Polaroid that he like took from that angle that he was standing at. It's literally just a screen cap of like the actual like camera shot. And I hate when movies do that shit where like they're trying to do like security footage or a flashback and it's just the same footage that they had before, just reusing that or a screenshot of it. It's so fucking lazy and dumb. And
right. Doesn't make any sense. We then cut to Wendy with her dad, and they have met for breakfast. And she's telling her dad she can't keep the car. He gave her the car because he thought she was going to marry Howie. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I can't marry Howie because I don't love him. And he's like, well, love will come. You know,
you'll learn to
be
love
a
him.
Wife and mother because you're a woman and you shouldn't have any dreams or aspirations for yourself.
Fuck
Gross.
That guy.
You also sent her to college. Like, what did you think she was going to do with that?
Right.
I don't get it. She says also she wants to get her own apartment because she has her own job. She does not want to work for him. And she's in love with Billy. It's like, why?
It's like, come on. You have so many other redeeming qualities.
Right. We then cut away from that, and we're at Leslie's apartment. And, sorry, I take that back. No, yes, Leslie arrives at her old apartment with Alec. Mm-hmm. And again, a fucking man-child of a person. They fight over records, and, you know, he's super butthurt about the Kevin thing. And she's basically like, all right, I'm leaving. Like, she doesn't take anything with her, basically. And just fucking leaves.
Yeah, and his, like, the whole thing where, you know, she's like, well, I only slept with one person where you slept with, you know, a bunch of people. And he's like, yeah, but I didn't know any of them, and they're all faceless people. And she's like, yeah, like, that's any better.
Right. Nothing that you're saying makes up for the fact of you probably cheating on her your entire relationship.
Right.
But leading her to believe you wanted to be in this relationship to proposing / trying to marry her.
Yeah. Alec just continues to just dig that hole even
what
deeper.
Kind of sense does any of that make? She tells him that she's moving in with Jules, and he yells at her while she's kind of leaving that she ran out on their relationship. And I'm like, of course you fucking said that. Oh, you fucking man babies all over this. Anyway, we cut back to her now at Jules's apartment. So she has moved in there, and Kevin is there, and he has written something finally because he's kind of struggled throughout this whole movie to actually write anything, I guess, decent for this paper that he works for. She's very happy for him and proud of him. But as soon as he goes to kiss her, she's just like, you know, no.
Yeah.
And like, so clearly that's not what she wants either.
Right.
She starts to try to tell him that, but then the phone rings and it's fucking Alec. And then there's this, again, childish man thing. They go back and forth. And he's yelling at her to hang up the phone. Alec's, you know, well, is that Kevin? Why is he there? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh my God. Fucking children. All of you. Then she finally does tell Kevin, look, we had all these amazing feelings. We had sex, but that doesn't mean I love you. Yeah. And I'm just trying to get away from Alec right now. And she's basically like, I'm just trying to figure out my life, man. I can't be in another relationship right now. Mm-hmm. She tries to say it in a nice way, sort of, but Kevin is obviously heartbroken again.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of sad at this point. I do like Kevin. I don't hate his character.
He's got this kind of Matthew Perry vibe, like Friends Matthew Perry kind of.
Exactly.
He's like the sarcastic friend who is like kind of giving everybody a little bit of shit, but clearly has his own problems.
Yeah, of course. So he leaves. We cut away from that, and Leslie has arrived at Alec's office, and she's telling him that Jules is in trouble and she needs his help. And of course he goes running because, I guess. She said some finance company came to their apartment and took all their stuff and her Jeep, and she's just been lying in her room and won't let her in the apartment. It's locked and all the stuff she can't get in. She's also been lying to them about sleeping with her boss because she got fired like a month or two ago. So she clearly wasn't having this affair with the boss the whole time. Alec does leave with her. They go to her apartment. They kind of try to kick the door in. But then Kirby and Kevin arrive too. And Alec, of course, is like, you invited him. It's like, yeah, she called everybody, dude.
Yeah.
It's not
It's like there are bigger things at stake here, clearly.
right. And this is the moment in the movie where they're trying to get you to feel something for some of these characters, and it just doesn't fucking work.
Right.
Because the only thing that really ends up happening is Jules is in her bedroom with the windows open for some fucking reason, and it's freezing cold. And they all try to get in one way or the other. Billy finally breaks through the door. It's all so dramatic.
Because there's not a lot of, like, all of these friends coming together to help out this one friend. It's kind of like they all just are kind of there and are kind of like, and they're just being so petty with each other. Like, there's a whole bit where Alec basically hangs Kevin off a balcony while this whole thing is going on with Jules, and she's having her mental breakdown. And it's like, they can't put away their individual, like, issues for 1 second to help out their friend that's having a breakdown.
No.
Like, there is no, like, coming togetherness. It's just a bunch of petty early 20-year-olds just that can't get over their problems to look at the bigger picture for 2 seconds.
And all that's happening to her is she's sitting there in the cold. Like, I thought she, like, slit her wrist or something.
Right.
Crazy.
Or I thought it was going to be something a little bit more where she was, like, maybe standing on a ledge or something. Like, she's just sitting there in a cold room. Like, granted, yeah, I'm sure that's, you know, not safe to sit depending on how bad the temperatures are.
But again, it's that drama.
Yeah.
It's that friend. It's the cry wolf friend, too. She's
Yeah.
all wrapped. That's the kind of person that Jules is. And she's cried wolf a bunch of times, clearly, with different things. And they've always come to her rescue. So here they are again. Because this friend group is fucking toxic.
Yeah.
Anyway, Billy breaks in eventually. She starts crying. They, again, are supposed to have this, like, heart-to-heart. And may we remind you, Billy basically sexually assaulted her.
Yeah.
So of all the friends you could have sent into this scene, you send him in? Because this is supposed to be, like, his redeeming moment? Are you fucking kidding me?
Right.
Again, she mentions the stepmother. And how she's in this coma, and she's had great conversations with her, and she just wants to know why her father hates her so much, and she starts crying, and Billy's like, he goes on this weird, like, philosophical tangent, and again, this whole part, they just shoved it in here. Like, St. Elmo's Fire means something. We'll get to it in fun facts on specifically what it is. Billy kind of explains it in this scene, but why put this here?
Right, and
This
it was
makes no sense.
right. It's poor placement of it. It's the timing is bad for the characters, and apparently there's like some misinformation that was thrown in with the way that he explains St. Elmo's Fire.
It's not correct.
Yeah, that both Rob Lowe was very annoyed by, and a lot of fans of if there are fans of this movie,
There are.
clearly,
That's why it's on the list.
Clearly, that's true. That's true. Which I don't know.
This is a beloved movie, literally.
Hey man,
and
I mean, I'm a fan of Tokyo Drift, so I really can't give him too much shit. So you know,
I don't get it.
but yeah, there's like misinformation that apparently has annoyed a lot of people, filmmakers, or people that were involved with the film, with the inaccuracy of the way of how St. Elmo's Fire is explained during this whole monologue. But
honestly, it doesn't fucking matter.
yeah, I don't really.
Because nothing matters.
There's enough to take away from this movie that I don't think that this really takes enough, like too much away from it as is. So, but
this whole scene, it's supposed to make you feel something for
Right.
Jules and feel sad, because this is the like sad part of the movie.
This is supposed to be like everybody's character arc kind of thing, where everybody comes together, but they don't, and it just
they don't at all. Because they really just get her picked up and brushed off, and that's it. They move on from it. We then, after this, scene, this whole debacle with Jules, we see Wendy and Billy, and she's clearly in her own apartment now, so she's got her own apartment. She's painting. Billy is basically explaining that his wife did marry that other person, and that's a good thing, because he'll take care of her and the kid, and he basically won't be involved because he's a deadbeat piece of shit. So, done and done.
Yeah.
There. He also gives Wendy some money. He's trying to pay her back for all the stuff she did for him, to an extent, I guess. And at this point, they get into this conversation again about her virginity. And she's like, why is this so important to you to know? And exactly. Like, why do you keep asking?
The way that I see it is that, so the first time that we see Wendy and Billy really have like a real conversation with each other is that scene where Billy comes over to Wendy's family's home to, have dinner.
And they're on the roof.
And Wendy makes a side comment about how she is still a virgin. And so the first time when we see them interact again later at the party, Billy brings it up, and I kind of see it as a way of like him bringing up conversation, or just like trying to create conversation, which is a very weird way of going about it. Yes. But I think he had more pure intentions, when asking it a little bit more. Like I said, he could have gone about it a different way about trying to maintain conversation, but I don't know. But it is weird that he would.
I don't know. I think you're supposed to think he kept asking her because he wanted to be the one to take her virginity.
Yeah, that's what I eventually kind of figured out. Yeah.
Which is disgusting.
Yeah.
And you're her friend. And she clearly is in love with you, and you know it.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what happens next. He makes it very clear that he wants to sleep with her. She's obviously very willing. They do end up sleeping together. Mm-hmm. More saxophone music plays, of course. And then we just see everybody walking Billy to the bus stop, so he's leaving. Mm-hmm. We see the bus is bound for New York, which, yeah. Billy's dead in 2 years. Let's just put it out there. He moves to New York. He's a complete fuck up, has nothing good to bring to anybody. He's dead within a couple years. Mm-hmm. He OD'd, for sure. And again, we just see this scene of them all together watching as the bus goes and sad music plays. And we're supposed to feel something in this moment. And it's like, what? What am I supposed to feel now?
Thank God this movie's over.
Almost over, yes. That's exactly what I said. Because I paused it again to roll my eyes so hard that they almost fell out of my head. And I'm like, thank God there's only like 5 minutes left of this fucking thing.
Yeah.
So Billy leaves, goes to New York. Everybody's kind of joking about growing up and what they're supposed to do now.
Yeah.
And they pass St. Elmo's bar. All of a sudden, they're like, we can't go in. We got to be adults. We got to work tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay. So you grew up throughout this experience. And they do that weird boogada thing. Yeah. And that's the movie.
That's the movie.
I skipped over a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because, again, not super relevant.
Right. Yeah.
And I fucking hated this movie.
It's not good. It's not good at all.
Oh, terrible.
I was like, okay, it's going to have its quirks, John Hughes type beat kind of thing. But I wasn't expecting it to just not have, like, any redeeming qualities to it.
Or really a plot, or... No,
I mean,
nothing.
I get the whole, like, it's a bunch of kids trying to make their way in the world and figure out life. It's the Dazed and Confused of the 1980s. Maybe, I guess that's one way that you could look at it. But at least Dazed and Confused is entertaining, and it has redeemable characters. Yeah.
I just don't know what the point of this movie was at all.
I don't know.
Someone can maybe explain it to us, but I don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, Joel Schumacher out here disappointing me once again. But rest in peace. But
indeed.
All right.
So do you have any fun facts? I have a few.
Not
really.
A lot. Kind of, like I said, I before we started recording, I was like, I found a couple cast interviews, and a few like articles primarily explaining the whole, Elmo's fire debacle, with that one monologue.
I have the whole breakdown in mind.
Yeah.
So I'll go over the actual meaning.
Okay.
That's the true thing. Well, if you don't have any fun facts, like I said, I have a couple.
Go for it.
Demi Moore had a very serious drug addiction at the time.
Yeah.
She actually was sent to rehab before she could start shooting this film. So, cool. Mare Winningham, who played Wendy, was supposedly the good girl, the virgin. She was actually pregnant while filming.
Oh, really?
She was pregnant with her third child.
Huh.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
The story kind of surrounds a bunch of Georgetown grads, which is, yes, a university outside of D.C., but it's more towards Maryland. Georgetown would not let them shoot there, but the University of Maryland did. So a lot of the campus scenes that we see are there. And then St. Elmo's Bar is actually a bar based there called the Tombs. That was a very popular University of Maryland bar.
I think
that was a real place.
Yeah, I think I saw with the University of Georgetown where it was like I saw some article where they were like they were more than willing to host an exorcism but not have a film about a bunch of teenagers having affairs with each other, or not teenagers but young adults.
Right. Young adults.
Yeah.
Yes. You kind of mentioned this earlier, but the street that the bar is located and the loft that Alec and Leslie share, Jules's apartment, and that's it, are all part of the backlot in Universal Studios. Right to the left of this is where the Hill Valley Clock Tower is from Back to the Future.
Yep.
That's the only cool thing. You should have showed that.
Right.
Like, literally. The film's producer is Lauren Schuler Donner. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Maybe it's a man. I don't know. This is literally what he said this movie was about. It's a confrontation of problems that happens to friendships after life-changing events such as graduating from school, marriage, divorce, or changing jobs. Unfortunately, old friendships tend to dissolve as one moves on in life. So this movie centers around important friendships in important times of their lives.
Okay.
That's it. That's literally it. Are you fucking kidding me? No. No, it's not.
No,
This is not about. Not at all. This is literally about toxic people doing toxic things to each other, not growing up one bit. And then at the end, you're supposed to be like, well, there they go. So dumb.
Yeah.
All right. So the only cool fun fact of the movie, the title, St. Elmo's Fire, is derived from a real life event that Rob Lowe butchers in this movie. But it is a meteorological phenomenon. It's when weather, some sort of luminous plasma, so lightning, or even if you're traveling by sea and the light tower will kind of hit off the objects.
I have a thing from Wikipedia here that Elmo's Fire is a weather phenomenon in which luminous plasma is created by a corona discharge from a rod-like object such as a mast, spire, chimney, or animal horn, and an atmospheric electric field. So, like, basically, when you see, like, Tesla coils, like, stuff going off of that, it's kind of like that, but off of not something that's designed to immediately emit those kinds of discharges.
The point is, though, it's what your eye sees.
Yeah.
So it's not actually what's really happening in front of you. It's almost like refraction when you can think about it like that. But yeah, it's something that happens. It's a real event. And yeah, Rob Lowe butchered the fuck out of it. Yeah. So don't even know why it was called this for that. If that's the reason you picked the title, whoever picked it, that makes no sense either.
I think I saw some article about with Joel Schumacher saying that it was like there was like a St. Elmo's hotel that he lived at or lived near during the time of writing this or something like that.
Okay.
But
also doesn't make this any better of a title pick. Ugh. Anyway, that's my fun facts. Didn't have a lot.
Yeah.
Because I honestly didn't care that much to go into depth.
Fair enough.
Trying to find it.
Fair enough. But yeah, so
I'm sorry this was on the list. I feel like this was a huge letdown.
Was this your first time watching it?
It was.
Me too.
I've seen clips of it periodically throughout my life. I'm sure other people watching it, whatever. But
yeah, I knew nothing about it really going into it, other than like you said it. Characters from classic John Hughes films. I was like, okay, so it's like it'll have its quirks, but it'll be kind of uplifting and be a real coming of age story. And It's not any of this. It's just
not
bad.
At all.
with a
It's
lot of
bad.
toxic, unredeemable characters. So,
Yeah, I hated it.
but yeah.
I hated every minute of it.
All right. Well, I think that's going to be about it for this episode of the Cult Cinema Podcast. What do we got going on for the next episode?
So the next episode's kind of up in the air.
Okay.
I would love a viewer request. If anyone's out there listening, cool. But I think you and I will have to talk about, we're kind of whittling down the list. So
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly where we want to go with it.
Gotcha.
So to be determined.
All right. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you again, everybody, for watching. Make sure that, if you do enjoy the show, let us know what you think of it in the comments. Let us know what movies you think that we should go over in the future. You can do that in the YouTube comments, Apple Podcasts. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you can keep up with us on and find out when new episodes drop. We usually release them every other Friday or Saturday, depending on our schedules. But yeah, do you have any other things to add, Ashley, before we get
Just
out of
follow
here?
us on Instagram, find all the things, and thanks for listening.
All right. Thank you again, everybody, for watching. We'll see you in the next one.